Hi, this is Ken and Michelle Bass.
And you're listening to the Resilient Parenting Podcast. Well, here we are once again.
Are we?
Yes, we're in our
Let me
kitchen
check. Yes,
trying
okay.
to there's the cat trying to make noise. But I'm really excited about this episode. I feel like I say that every time, but
We're excited about all the episodes.
we are, and we're excited to bring it to more people. So if you like what you're hearing, please share. Please let other people know about this. Definitely leave a comment if you can, some stars. That will, I don't know, it does something to make more people be able to have access
the
to
algorithm
us.
or something? Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And we do have the Facebook page, so you can join that. It's the Resilient Parenting Podcast group. And we are going to have something special. Oh, did you hear that? I hope you guys can hear that. That is our cat, Draco.
Maybe your cat could hear this if you have a
Yeah,
cat.
you know, this podcast can be for cats too.
Do you speak cat?
Draco, mommy and daddy are working.
Okay. I guess we'll just be quiet and let the cat take over, or you just listen to the podcast episode, which is coming up
Now.
next. Hi, today we're talking with Salome Mwangi of Mwangi Incorporated. And how are you doing, Salome?
I'm doing so good, Ken and Michelle. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. So, can you tell our listeners about yourself and about your what you do?
That is such a loaded question because I do so much. I was born and raised in Kenya, and I moved here about almost 21 years ago now,
Wow.
through the refugee resettlement route. And I can tell you it's been the adventure of a lifetime, stepping in from one culture where you know everything and into a culture that is, you think you know because you've watched movies and
Mm-hmm.
when I moved here, my daughter was 8 months old, and now she's 21. She just turned 21 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Congrats.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I think I consider myself successful because both of us are still here. Nobody has killed the other. But it's been a very interesting journey of parenting and I'll stick to the parenting. The parenting, what were my expectations? I thought I was raising a little Kenyan girl. She had no idea what a little Kenyan girl was. And that would have been a source of stress and clashing. And we
Mm-hmm.
have, it's not been a smooth ride, but it's been a very different journey. To this day, I still have some of my family members saying, "Oh, you're letting her do that. Why didn't she
Yes.
do this?" Because that's the cultural expectation back home and in that culture. And even for my siblings who are here and they're raising their kids and they're realizing this is not um, how we were raised.
So, how is Idaho compared to Kenya?
So here's the interesting thing. And obviously, very white.
Mm-hmm.
Kenya is very chocolate. But it's more than that. The people are amazing. Idaho is a very, very welcoming community, regardless of where you go to. I feel like many Idahoans live their life with a sense of curiosity.
Hmm?
And that is how they welcome the stranger. And they want to know a little bit about you. I remember meeting somebody who asked me, what's Kenya like? And Kenya is such a diverse place. We have the coastline, we have the desert, we have the lush green mountain. We have a mountain that has snow on the top, which is unusual for an African country, especially
Yeah.
where the equator runs through it. So I didn't know how to explain it. So I just brought up pictures from Google of Kenya. And I said, this is Kenya, this is Kenya, this is Kenya, this is Kenya. And he looked at the mountains and he said, no wonder you love Idaho, because it has memories of Kenya. And I hadn't even thought of it that way.
Mm.
There are places in Kenya that look very much like some of the places I've been to in Idaho. So Idaho
Wow.
has been very welcoming. Is it different? Yes, it is. You drive on the wrong side of the road, and I continue saying that. And I think that's a great metaphor for the culture where you
Hmm.
come in and you're like, we're supposed to be driving on the left and everybody's driving on the right. And you
Hmm.
don't realize what that does to your psyche because you feel like I'm on the wrong side of the road. Oh my goodness, what if
Hmm.
we crash into each other?
Hmm.
But as long as everybody keeps knows what the traffic rules are, we're going to be safe. And as long as everybody's obeying them for the most part, we're going to be safe. It's when my brain felt like, wait a minute, I need to keep left. And to this day, I have to remind myself on days when I'm really, really tired that we are keeping right and not left. And
Hmm.
I literally have to think, wait, I'm turning. Which side of the road am I turning into so that
Hmm.
I do not?
Okay. We know quite a few, or met quite a few Kenyans here in Idaho over the years, still do. And I've often thought about and ask you to address this. How do you go about assimilating into a different culture altogether, especially working with in your child? How do you change the culture set in their mind, possibly,
Or do you?
or do you? Yeah.
I don't think so. When our children come here, they're more of a blank page and you can draw on it whatever you want to draw on it.
Hmm.
We're the ones who come here with things that have already been painted on there with ink that we consider permanent. And there's even a saying in Kiswahili, it says mkosamila ni mtumwa, and it means he or she who loses their culture or does not have their culture is a slave. If you want to assimilate, it means that I'm forgetting the culture that I came from and I'm trying to
Hmm.
present myself as a blank slate, which is not
Hmm.
possible. Or I can come here and get integrated. And when I get integrated, it
Hmm.
means that I'm um, engaging with the community in some ways in which I am losing or I am letting some of my cultural things blur into the background.
Hmm.
Exactly.
I did for our listeners who can't see, I did kind of like a back and forth with my hands of like holding on to certain things and letting go of certain things.
And that's what you have to do in order to make it in this culture. Otherwise, you're going to grow up thinking Idahoans are doing things wrong. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe they eat that. Oh, did you see what it is that they drink? Like when you see ads for fast food companies, initially I used to think, seriously, somebody goes and buys that, pays for that? I cannot believe they do that. And I would do the same to my kid, to where I'm like, no, we're not going to McDonald's. Do you know what it is that they serve at It's not even food. And
I feel like we've had that conversation.
and and then I would go home and I would cook my ugali and my greens and my meat
Mm,
or fish, and she's rejecting it. And
mm,
her rejecting my food felt like she's rejecting me.
right.
So I had to step into that space and say, you know what? Golden Corral, have no clue what that is. I'm not sure I recognize most of the foods, but I'll go there with her. And I found, hey, wait a minute. Some of this food is tasty. It's nice,
Hmm.
you know? So it becomes this dance with your kid or with your kids, where you're letting in part of this culture, and in letting in part of this culture into your own life as a parent, it makes it easier for them because you're modeling that. And so it's interesting. Deborah and I can talk about things Kenyan and we are laughing because she gets it.
Hmm.
The same way we will laugh about some of the stuff she sees on TikTok and is sharing with me. And if I don't understand it, she'll break it down for me. And then I'll be like, oh my goodness, I can see why that is so humorous.
Well, in a perfect world, pretty much everybody would want to learn each other's culture too. So maybe that's not happening as much as it should, but with our kids growing up as your daughter has, and she can share some of her culture that she's learned from you with others too, and go back and forth.
Actually, I feel like she has become a pretty good advocate for the Kenyan culture.
Mhm.
So even though she's a part of it, she's still an outsider because she wasn't raised in it.
Hmm.
So, for example, we went to Kenya several years ago, and then we went on safari. And one part of the safari was a cultural safari where we went into one of those villages where people are living there and we're able to interact with them. And this was a Maasai village. And so my daughter is very beautiful. And one of the young men in that village on this visit was like, hey, if you want, you can get married to the chief's son. And very interesting, right? Intriguing. I think at the time,
Hmm.
14, and my daughter is like, I'm 14, and then this guy was like, but you don't understand, this is the chief's son. And so she wondered, what's the big deal about him being the chief's son? And this guy said, other women would get, maybe their family will get 2 cows for dowry. Because this is the chief's son, your mother will get 5 cows for dowry. So I'm looking
Okay.
at it and I'm thinking, hey, profitable.
You've
Why?
actually thought about it for a second.
This is what I really loved about what Deborah observed. She was like, wait a minute. So I get to stay here and my mom goes home with 5 cows? How is that fair? So the fact
Oh.
that she's
Hmm.
able to understand the culture but still views it from an ex an external perspective,
Hmm.
we see how some of the things that we believe or have practiced are simply ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now, I was just going to say, because you're in that echo chamber where everybody is doing the same thing and saying the same thing, you tend to stay stuck in some of those things,
Hmm.
um, which makes integration a little more challenging because you don't want to let go of what you believe and what you know and what you expect your kids to show up or how you expect your kids to show up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm curious about cultural brokering because when I looked on your website,
Mhm.
Salome Mwangi.com. There's a little plug. And it will be in the show notes. So you'll be able to go check out everything that you're up to. But it talked about storytelling and cultural brokering. So, what is cultural brokering? Because I
Great.
think it goes along with what we're talking about, I think.
So when I moved here, I, I speak three different languages, English, Kiswahili, and Kikuyu. You move into a culture where there's only one language.
Mm,
When you speak a variety of languages, the beauty is when I don't have a word to describe what it is I'm trying to say, I'll borrow from one of the other languages.
mm,
Well, if I put a word from Kiswahili, you guys are not going to know what it is that I'm talking about.
no.
And either side of the culture has concepts that do not
Mm,
translate at all, probably don't exist on the other side. And so I found myself working as an interpreter to where I could tell I have said the words that have been spoken by the provider to the client or the patient,
mhm.
but the patient didn't understand the weightiness or the significance of what has
Oh,
just been said. We speak based on the culture that we have come from. Like here
mm,
in America, we say you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
yeah.
We don't even have boots, let alone
Right.
bootstraps in my culture, right? So
Hmm.
in making sure that that is communicated, I had to back up a little bit and let the provider know this is where we come from. That saying is not significant at all. And then I'd have to turn around and talk to the person being told and then paint this picture of, how you've seen cowboys and how they dress up in boots. And usually it's an individualistic community. And so if he
Hmm.
falls down or if he gets in trouble, he has to figure out a way to get himself back up. Gets lost on us because we're a collectivist culture. It's like
Hmm.
if I'm falling down, where is everybody to? There should be somebody there to pick me up. So the cultural brokering piece is that one where I'm able to say to the American or to the US born person, that makes no sense to this culture. And then it's
Mm,
to this person who's new to our culture, this is what it means when we say this here in the US. And in that way, people go away understanding exactly what's been said, exactly what the expectation is, instead of just throwing words at each other that have absolutely no meaning, and we don't have the concept, the concept and the construct that they're coming from.
that makes so much sense. And then it makes me wonder about like back to parenting, where a child comes home and is like talking about something that's different than the culture that the parent was raised.
Mhm.
That cultural brokering of like, how does that work? A lot of times I know that it's a lot of times the child who will do some of that trying to explain and have the parent understand. But what have you noticed or in your own experience?
So I think my daughter was maybe 9, third grade, and they're learning the multiplication tables. Well, when I grew up, it was a multiplication table and you had to memorize it, right?
Hmm.
And they have the standardized tests where they want to see how many you can get right in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So she says, "Hey, mom, help me with this because I've been struggling with it." So I take the paper and I help her and I give it to her. And then she says, "Give me more, give me more. I want to become faster." In in the education system that I was raised in, you would not be given the same question twice because they knew you'd
Mm-hmm.
memorize the answer. So you'd be given different math problems, let's say, at different times, because they
Mm-hmm.
want you to get the concept, not just memorize. So I kept giving her different ones. And by the third one, she was like, "Mom, you're tricking me." "What do you mean I'm
Oh.
tricking you?" And she's like, Every time you give me something different. What am I supposed to do?" And she said, "In class, the teacher gives us the same one so that you become faster." And that's when it dawned on me, oh my goodness, you're memorizing. Such an aha moment for me because I realized I'm holding her to the standard that I was held to
Mm-hmm.
in how I was raised and the education system that I grew up in, which was completely different from. So here we're only doing it so that they can pass. Well, as many can pass the standardized tests.
Yeah.
And we're really not educating our kids. So many parents will come here, and if you haven't had the opportunity to tease that out when it comes to the education, you get very frustrated because your
Mm-hmm.
kids are not doing what you think they should be doing. And you're not able to have those conversations with the teachers because, again, the teacher doesn't know about the education system that I grew up in and what the expectations are.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had a really interesting journey. I purposely put my kid in schools where she would be challenged. She's obviously she was a little black girl in a very white Idaho, and some of the teachers and some of the people that she would interact with would treat her. In fact, she would come home and ask me, "Mom, what is welfare? Mom, are we on food stamps?" Because there are people who would have those conversations with her. And I decided I don't even know what welfare is. We were on food stamps for 6 months after we came here as
Mm-hmm.
a refugee family. And I do not want you to be the victim of a single story of what people of color look like and the expectation. So I put her in charter schools where I had to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And I wanted to be involved because that helped me understand the American culture a lot more.
Yeah.
And I think we're all the better for it today. But not every immigrant parent has that luxury of taking
Right.
the time to tease it out, to understand, for somebody to help to do the cultural brokering,
Mm-hmm.
for them to realize this is how I want my kid to experience the education system, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I know a lot of parents, older ones, have preconceived notions and standards they were raised on that they don't realize. Times have changed, and you were kind of touching on that preconceived notions with your daughter going to the school, and you're having to deal with this on probably a daily basis with your cultural teachings, right?
I do, because I do have the opportunity to, the only word I can think that is closest is coach some of the parents who come here, and sometimes they find themselves in trouble, sometimes even with the authority, because what do you do when your kid is out of control?
Mm-hmm.
You make sure that you're making those reporting so that you as a parent are not reported as being negligent. Now, isn't it sad that you're here, you're new to this culture, your kid is reacting to, because I truly believe that's what the kids do. They come here and they react because our kids are third culture kids. So she's showing up one way at home, and in school, they're showing up in a completely different way. In fact, we've had this conversation with Deborah and with other parents in the community. So to inject empathy into the fact that our kids are constantly code switching in
Mm-hmm.
order to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talked to my daughter about this, when I finally found out, is when she said, Mom, I really don't belong anywhere. I don't belong in the Kenyan community because some of the things that you guys are talking about, I have no clue. And I really don't belong to the American culture because I moved here when I was younger. So I decided I'm going to build that atmosphere of belonging and mattering for her and for
Mm-hmm.
other some of the other kids that we interact with, so that they don't they don't go through life feeling like I don't belong here and I don't belong here. And
Hmm.
even when we've gone to Kenya, where she thought, oh my goodness, finally I'm going to a place of my people, she still stands out because she really doesn't belong there either.
Right. You know, I have had conversations about this specifically, and one of the things that was shared was cultural homelessness, of like not fitting anywhere and being culturally alone. And that's so for those that are coming here and are here now, um, what would you say to help them through that, or for anyone who is working with this population or interacts with anyone that is different from like instead of just the stereotypes that like you were mentioning, what would you say?
So first of all, thank you for bringing up that concept. You really brought it home, the cultural homelessness, the cultural outcast.
Hmm.
So I would like them to know that you're not alone. And when I started working with my daughter on that and saying, I am so sorry that I expected you to show up in this way, and that's not who you are. You are a product of the cultures that you interact with, and you have to code switch. And that doesn't mean that you're being inauthentic. You're being as authentic as you can be in that particular culture. So one, letting them know that they're not alone. And that has brought very many young people into my own life who
Mm-hmm.
have said, oh my goodness, you get it. You understand why when we're leaving the house, I have this long skirt because that's what's acceptable in my culture, in your
Hmm.
culture. And then the moment I leave the house and I get on the bus to go to school, I lose my long skirt and I'm wearing very tight shorts under that that my parents
Yeah.
will reject. And so letting them know that one, they're not alone. There's so many others. My daughter ended up befriending so many other third culture kids, and their stories were so similar. And she told me that's the one place where I feel like they get me and they understand me. And I can show up as authentically as I can because I know I'm not going to be rejected. Two, for the parents, and I've had the privilege of working with some parents and helping them loosen up the grip that we have on our culture and letting them know that a lot of times we are holding on to it and we don't realize ourselves that we're moving along. I'm driving on the right side of the road, whether I like it or not. And that is how I'm staying alive. So,
Hmm.
how about you get on the right side of the culture to help you stay alive and to help you continue fostering those healthy relationships with your kids? Does that mean that I eat mac and cheese? Sometimes I eat mac and cheese. Do I enjoy it? No. Do I show that I'm disgusted? No. But that helps me. That helps me stay on that right side of the road with my kid and building a relationship that really builds this resilient individual who will continue to impact this community in ways that I would never have thought of when we moved here because
Hmm.
they have been empowered by the relationships that they're having with and it also helps me as an adult who's come here. I look at pizza and we had pizza in Kenya, but it was always like, yeah, that's white people food, right? And then I come here and, my daughter hears people saying, yeah, we had pizza night last night. So then we'll buy the pizzas and I figured out what goes into the pizza. And then I took it a step further to where we would make pizzas. We'd buy naan bread, the little naan breads,
Hmm.
Mm.
and everybody would make their own individual pizza so that she loads it with her pepperoni, which she loves, and I load it with the vegetables that I love.
Oh, nice.
We're still enjoying the same meal. Mhm.
Hmm.
Still enjoying the same meal, and yet everybody's getting a little of their own flavor, that it's not separating us, it's still bringing us together.
I love that so much. Wow. So I'm going to share your page. Are there other resources that are out there that you can think of that could also be helpful?
The sad thing is there's so many people doing amazing work out there, but it's
Mhm.
almost like we're so isolated. So we also teach, I partner with Tanta. Tanta Incorporated is a relatively new nonprofit in town.
Hmm.
Belongs to a friend of mine called Ramadeen. I think you should set up to meet with her.
Okay.
She's a licensed clinical social worker, and Tanta works specifically with women, refugee and immigrant women who have come here, and equips them with.
Mm.
And so it helps with those relationships as well. There's also the WCA, and I believe that they have hired some of the refugee, especially some of the third culture kids who are working there.
Oh, nice.
And I feel like that is then beginning to open up opportunities. There's also KC Family Foundations, who I know have helped with
Mm-hmm.
some of the refugee families when it comes to matters pertaining to their kids.
Mm-hmm. Familiar with that. I
Okay.
have another question. I'm sorry. For someone who's listening who doesn't maybe have interaction with the refugee population, what would you say to them? What would you want them to know?
I would like them to know that we are more alike than we are different.
Mm.
So step out in curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
very much a part of our Idaho DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's more, I hear people saying this, oh, there's no culture in Idaho. I'm like, yes, there is. It may not look like the culture in other places, but we
Mm-hmm.
still have it. There's refugee restaurants or immigrant-owned restaurants, and you can start from there. And
Mm.
when you start a conversation with food, you can never go wrong,
Oh, you
Yep.
got me.
Yep.
right? To have those conversations around the food, and this is what I liked, and this is what is the significance of this meal. Because some
Mm-hmm.
of the meals, kind of like how we have turkey for Thanksgiving. Who said we have to eat turkey for Thanksgiving? It's part of our tradition, right? So
Mm-hmm.
let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about the food that we're eating and then take it a little deeper. Allow your curiosity to help you form those relationships without preconceived notions like we do when I
Mm-hmm.
come here and this is how my kid is supposed to show up. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, if you go to an Ethiopian restaurant and they're eating this flat bread called injera that looks like a pancake but does not taste as advertised, right? So let's find out about injera and why is it the staple. And then you will come to find out that actually the grain that makes the injera, the teff, Teff, is
Mm-hmm.
grown right here in Caldwell and
Oh,
exported
wow.
everywhere. Yeah.
There's tons of multicultural festivals and things like that going on too. Maybe step out and take the kids to one of those.
So
Hmm.
food,
Soul
start
food.
with food,
Yeah.
Hmm.
go to, yeah, Soul Food Festival.
Yeah.
So there's food, go to opportunities for festivals or other opportunities to be curious, like you said,
Hmm.
and learn.
I prefer to call it authentic curiosity because I really do want to know. Because you have people who, are asking you questions and they're just edging you along, right? Or egging you along.
Mm-hmm.
So for you as an individual, step out in that authentic curiosity. Go fishing. Somebody who came here as a refugee, and then we went fishing on this boat that has fish finders. And that family, we're still very good friends to this day. And it's really not about the fishing, it's about the time that you spend together,
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
getting
Yeah.
to do that cultural exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And it's formed bonds that have lasted, I think, for like 17, 18 years now.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Very good.
Yeah.
So authentic curiosity, and we are more alike than we are different. Those are some of the things that I'm holding on to, and I really, really appreciate your time today. This was fabulous.
Hmm. I loved it. I loved it. I like the fact that we are talking about the kids getting out and exploring a little bit more about new cultures, but not losing touch with
Mm-mm.
the culture that is part of their heritage.
No, they
Correct.
shouldn't. There shouldn't be loss in this.
No, they shouldn't be. And one of the things that I enjoyed now, when I look back now, I really enjoy about choosing to drive on this road that has two
Mhm.
lanes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One, it takes both of us. Because if I'm just driving on one lane and there's nobody on the other, it's bland. I could fall
Mm-hmm.
asleep and
Mhm.
crash and die. Anyway, not what I want to do. However, in saying I'm letting my kid be a part of this community, be a part of this culture. So I would never go whitewater rafting. I have no idea why I would put my life at risk, right? But that's part of the adrenaline rush that this
Hmm.
community, some of the people in this community thrive on, right?
Oh yeah.
So my daughter has gone whitewater rafting in some of the schools that she went to. She's gone to Bogus to figure out how to survive in a blizzard. And I'm thinking, why would I ever be in a blizzard?
You know who to bring with you, though.
She's gone hiking up in Moab in Utah, not with me, but with people from this culture that have helped her feel like she really does belong to that culture. And so setting our kids free to be able to explore what this culture values and to make up their minds whether they like it and they'd like to continue with that. So my daughter keeps telling me, "Oh, I'm going to go camping in the summer." And I'm like, best of luck. Most of my life back in Kenya with my grandparents was like camping. We had to build a fire every morning.
Well, this has been really super great, and we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for the invitation. And I
Very
hope
nice
that
meeting you too.
it was a pleasure, Ken and Michelle. And I hope this will move the needle for some of the listeners that you have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This podcast is brought to you by the Idaho Children's Trust Fund.